The morning after the wedding was too quiet, not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, but the hollow kind, the aftermath of applause, the silence after the curtain falls. Liana woke slowly, blinking into unfamiliar light. The drapes had been pulled open sometime during the night, and golden bands of sunlight cut across the ivory sheets like silent judgments. Her body ached not with pain, but with the fatigue of being watched. The air smelled of jasmine and rosewood, faint and expensive, like everything else in this house. His house, her house. The thought coiled uncomfortably around her ribs. She sat up, slowly, testing her own steadiness. The robe was still wrapped around her. The emerald silk clung in soft waves, smelling faintly of him Tate, or whatever version of him he'd allowed her to see. The version that walked without help, that stood in the doorway with no apology, that held secrets like other men held glasses of wine, carefully, deliberately. She rubbed her eyes. What kind of man lets the world believe he's broken when he's not? The question burned under her skin. Her eyes flicked to the door across the room. Still closed. Had he returned to his own wing? Or had he stood somewhere in the dark watching her? No, she would have felt it, wouldn't she? She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, letting her feet rest on the cool marble floor. The room was too large, the ceiling too high. It was like living in the inside of a secret. She dressed, quickly choosing a cream, silk blouse and soft tobacco-colored trousers. From the closet filled with clothes she hadn't chosen, everything fit perfectly, as if someone had studied her body in absence. Downstairs, the staff moved like shadows, efficient, trained, silent, and less addressed. A tall man with peppered temples and an Aramu crest pin on his collar greeted her. Near the stairs, with a practiced bow, "Good morning, Mrs. Aramu," he said. His voice was warm, but not familiar. "Mr. Aramu is expecting you in the conservatory." She stared at him for a moment. "Is he now?" The man didn't flinch. "May I escort you?" "No need," she replied. "Just point me in the direction of whatever royal chamber he's taken over this morning." The man gestured down a long hall, lined with ancestral portraits and windows too tall for comfort. Liana walked slowly, deliberately. Her heels clacked against polished stone, echoing through the silence like a challenge. The conservatory was sunlight and glass. Vines curled along the rafters. Exotic birds chirped from golden cages, suspended like ornaments. The scent of orange blossom floated in from the open garden doors, and there he was seated in a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled, legs crossed, reading, not pretending to read, actually reading. She almost hated that. Tate looked up. "You're early," he said, marking his page with a strip of raw leather. "No," she said, stepping into the sunlight. "You're just surprised I showed up at all." His eyes followed her, calm, calculating, just slightly amused. "Should I be? You tell a woman to bring nothing," she said, "and then reveal you've been walking the entire time. Forgive me for not assuming you value honesty." He set the book down slowly, no flinch, no denial. "It wasn't a lie," he said evenly. "It was a strategy." "Oh good, we're married, and already playing chess." "We were playing chess. Before you said I do, Liana, you just didn't know it." She inhaled, held it, let it go. "So this," she gestured at the sunlight, the birds, the elegant hush of power. "What exactly is it? An apology, a performance?" "It's breakfast," he replied coolly, and nodded to the table behind him. It was set for two. Fresh mango slices glistened beside thin pancakes folded like silk, steaming tea, crusty bread, a small silver bowl of honey. Liana stared. He was impossible. Still, she sat. The stranger in the mirror the morning after. Liana learned the truth. The sunlight was cruel. It streamed in through the tall windows like it had every morning of her life. But today, it felt different, brighter, exposing, as if the very walls were whispering. You didn't know him at all. She lay on her back in the grand bed, still cocooned beneath the pale ivory duvet. Her eyes stared up at the canopy above filmy gauze in soft folds, dreamy and perfect. A room fit for a queen. Or a prisoner. Across the room, the The door where he had entered still stood closed. She hadn't slept after he left, hadn't moved. Her thoughts spun like a coin dropped in a marble bowl, fast, sharp, unrelenting. Tate Aramu was not disabled, and he had never corrected anyone who said he was. The implications bled through her like dye in water. Why the charade? Why the chair, the cane, the disappearing act from public life? What kind of man orchestrated a lie so thoroughly, so precisely, and then just watched as the world carried it forward? She sat up slowly, the silk robe shifting. On her skin, her bare feet touched the warm wood floor with a gentle thud. She needed answers. But more than that, she needed control, because last night had been a performance. But today would be her rewrite. Downstairs, the estate bustled. With staff recovering from the wedding, flower petals were swept from marble stairs. Silver trays polished. Champagne flutes disappeared into crates. Liana passed them in silence, offering no greetings, no expressions. Her presence alone parted the staff like a ripple through still water. At the far end of the main hallway, a pair of tall glass doors opened into the east wing, a part of the estate she hadn't explored. The Aramu family library was rumored to be a treasure trove of politics, espionage, and private manuscripts. But she wasn't looking for stories today, she was looking for him, and she found him. Tate sat alone at the long mahogany table near the window, dressed in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open, as if power came more from his poise than his position. A single mug of black coffee steamed near his elbow. He was flipping through a thick dossier, leather-bound. With red tabs, he didn't look up. "I was wondering," Liana said, voice cool as steel, "if you'd ever planned to tell me." He turned a page, leisurely. "Tell you what?" Her nostrils flared. "Don't play games. You know what I saw." Now he looked up. Not with guilt, not with apology, but with the precise calm of a man who had already anticipated this moment and measured it 3 moves ahead. "Do you want the performance again?" he asked softly. "Or the truth this time?" She crossed her arms. "Let's start with why you lied to the entire country." He closed the dossier. "It's not a lie," he said. "It's a silence." She blinked. "Is that supposed to be poetic? Because it sounds like manipulation." A beat passed. "Then let me be clear," he said, rising slowly from the chair. His full height was startling, this close, taller than she remembered from last night, or maybe just more solid. Now that she saw him for who he truly was. "After the accident, I spent a year in rehab. The damage was neurological. For a time, I needed the cane. Then I didn't. But by then, the world had made up its mind. They pitied me, they discounted me, and I let them." She studied him. Why? He stepped closer. "Because a man dismissed is a man unthreatening, and a man unthreatening can move unnoticed." Her breath caught. It wasn't just about power, it was about surveillance, control, influence from the shadows. He had turned invisibility into armor. "You were hiding in plain sight," she said, voice quiet now. He didn't smile. "Would you have married me, Liana, if you'd seen the whole man from the start?" She opened her mouth, closed it. The answer tangled in her throat. "I don't know," she whispered. And that was the most honest thing she'd said in days later. That afternoon, while the estate took its post-wedding nap, Liana stepped into the courtyard garden for air. The sun lit the hibiscus bushes in honeyed tones. From the far side, laughter drifted from the kitchen staff, real, unscripted, human. She wanted that dot. She wanted anything that didn't come scripted, rehearsed, or worn like ceremonial armor. A shadow fell over her shoulder. "You have a visitor," a voice said. It was Iaroth, her face unreadable as ever. "Your friend, Miss Tommy from university." Liana's breath caught. She turned to see her oldest confidant, striding up the walkway in heeled sandals and oversized sunglasses, arms flung open. "Queen Liana," Tommy cried, hugging her tight. Liana laughed for the first time in days. It broke something loose in her ribs. "You came," she whispered into her friend's shoulder. "Of course I came," Tommy said. "I've been waiting for the wedding invite for years. I just didn't expect it to feel like a Cold War summit." In the quiet privacy of Liana's quarters, with the doors shut and the perfumes cleared away, Tommy spoke what Liana had barely dared admit. "He's not what they say," Tommy said, slowly. "He's smarter, and more dangerous." Liana sat on the bed, sketchbook in her lap, her fingers absently tracing the edge. "You've met him before." "Once. 2 years ago. A charity gala. He asked one question about my startup and knew exactly where my funding leak was, without ever seeing a spreadsheet." Liana stared. "And he's never even mentioned it." "That's what makes him powerful," Tommy said. "He doesn't need to say things twice. He makes you say them." For him, that night, as the moon rose behind the estate and the night cicadas began their soft song, Liana stood on her balcony again, sketchbook open on the ledge. She was drawing a house again. This time, not a villa, not a palace, but a house. Modest, clean, built with honesty. Behind her, she sensed him approach. Tate. He leaned against the opposite post of the balcony, hands in his pockets. "No chair tonight either," she murmured. "No chair ever," he replied. Silence fell like fog between them. "Tell me something true," she said suddenly. He turned to her. "I watched you long before we ever met." She stilled. "I read your thesis on adaptive architecture," he continued. "I saw your designs. I knew who you were. That's why I agreed to the marriage." She turned fully toward him now. "So you did choose this?" He nodded once, but not to own you, to partner you. She didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. That, between them, was the beginning of something new. The room was still, a thick, unnatural quiet, like the kind that lingers right before a storm wrapped itself around Liana Elamine, like a second skin. She didn't breathe, couldn't. Her hands gripped the duvet, white-knuckled, her heart thudding in her ears, louder than the soft click of the glass bottle Tate had just set down on the nightstand. He hadn't said a word since, and she couldn't find one to say. He turned slightly, the warm glow from the lamp brushing his jawline, illuminating the kind of profile usually reserved for oil paintings, classical, commanding, impossible to read. "You," she tried again, her voice a faint rasp in her throat. "You walk." He blinked once, slow and intentional. Then he nodded. "I do." Liana's body shifted instinctively, half ready to flee, half rooted to the silk sheets. "You lied to me." "No," he said calmly. "I let the lie stand." She shook her head slowly. "That's the same thing." "Not quite," he murmured, turning fully toward her. "One is active deception. The other is selective silence." His tone was maddening, even unapologetic, as if the truth, her truth, was a chess move, not a betrayal. Liana felt heat rise in her chest. Not the gentle kind, the violent kind, the "how dare you" kind. "You let me believe you were disabled." "I never confirmed it," he said simply. "And neither did I ask anyone to lie. You told me to bring nothing. You said everything would be provided." That, she choked on the sudden emotion. That was all part of it, wasn't it? This control. His eyes narrowed, just slightly. "I wasn't controlling you. I was watching what you'd do when control was taken away." She stared at him, like he'd just admitted to a crime. What kind of man tests his wife before he's even said goodnight? Tate stepped forward, not too close, just enough for her to feel the weight of his presence. A man who has been lied to before, who has been used before, who no longer offers trust freely. "A beat then too. You think this is some kind of power game," she said. "That I'm here to manipulate you? My entire life has been a negotiation I never agreed to. I didn't choose this marriage. I didn't choose you." He flinched, not visibly, but something in his eyes, the flicker of real pain betrayed. "The crack in the stone. I know," he said finally. "But you're here, and you're walking," she replied. "And the world thinks you're not." He didn't deny it. Silence settled again, this time heavier, thicker. They stood in opposite corners of a palace room, dressed in softness and secrets, two strangers tied by family, reputation, and now the most elaborate lie either had ever Live inside. Why? She asked. It came out too soft, too vulnerable. Why pretend? He walked slowly to the window and opened it. The wind fluttered the curtains gently behind him, because when I stopped walking, they stopped expecting. And when I started again, I decided I liked the quiet. She furrowed her brows, stunned. You mean, ... you chose to stay hidden? He nodded. Slowly, pain taught me many things, Liana. One of them is that being invisible is sometimes safer than being admired. She folded her arms. You could have told me the truth. He turned. Would you have married me if I had? She opened. Her mouth closed it. That was the problem, wasn't it? She didn't know. The morning after her world fractured and reassembled itself. Liana awoke not to soft music or morning sunlight, but to silence. Thick, velvet silence. Her room, though wrapped in elegance, felt strangely hollow, like a stage after the curtain had dropped. The wedding was over. The audience had clapped. The show had ended, but the lead actress was still trapped inside the set. She sat up slowly, pushing the duvet off her legs and planting her bare feet on the cool wooden floor. Her gaze flicked to the door across the room, the one Tate had entered through the night before like a ghost slipping out of his disguise. But now, it was shut tight, its smooth surface betraying nothing. Had it really happened? She pulled her robe around her and walked toward the door, hand hovering over the handle. She didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, she turned to the wardrobe and opened it. Another curated dress waited on a satin hanger, deep wine, off the sleek but modest. A note pinned to the collar read in his meticulous handwriting. Meet me downstairs. 9 a.m. breakfast. No guards. No guards. Liana exhaled slowly. The man was full of contradictions. One moment, a riddle locked behind polished formality. The next, pulling off his own mask and walking into her room without explanation. Without apology, now he wanted to have breakfast. She stared at the dress like it might bite her. Then, with a muttered curse, she pulled it off the hanger and got ready. The dining room was unlike the one from the reception night. This one was smaller, more intimate. Still high-ceilinged and beautiful, but not built for show. French doors opened onto a small, sunlit courtyard filled with potted citrus trees and the faint trickle of water from a stone fountain. On the table, already set for two, a pot of coffee steamed. Silver trays shimmered beneath domed lids, and the scent of cinnamon hung faintly in the air. Tate was already there. He stood when she entered, wearing a crisp grey shirt and dark trousers, no tie, no wheelchair, no cane. She hated how the sight of him standing so effortlessly made her stomach twist. Morning, he said, voice low, unreadable. Liana didn't answer right away. She crossed the room, slow, deliberate, and took her seat. She didn't pour coffee. Didn't remove the dome over her plate. She just stared at him. You lied. I didn't correct, he replied. There's a difference. Her brow arched. Is that what we're going to do now? Wordplay and politics over eggs. He gave a slight shrug. I thought you might prefer the truth without the performance. She laughed, once dry, humorless. Then explain it to me. The chair, the secrecy, the lie, everyone told for you. He leaned back in his chair, eyes cool and steady. 3 years ago, I was in an accident. I was paralyzed for 10 months. Partial recovery took another year. But, when I stood again, the damage had already been done, not to my spine, but to my image. The world expects the president's son to be invincible. I gave them a version of me they couldn't dissect. Liana blinked. So you let the myth grow. I fed it, he admitted. Because it was easier than letting them rewrite my story. And me, she asked. What was I? A test audience? Tate didn't flinch. No. You were the only person who didn't try to flatter me, fix me, or fear me. That's why I wanted to meet you. That's why I told you to bring nothing. To strip me down, she asked. To see what you'd hold on to. The silence between them was thick again, but it wasn't empty. It thrummed with things unsaid, truths offered like fragile glass. Liana poured her coffee, No cream, no sugar. She sipped and let the bitterness anchor her. You think you know me, she said at last. Because you studied my favorite designers and memorized the shape of my heels. I know you're not impressed by chandeliers or guest lists, he replied. I know you look calm when you're angry, and that you only bite your lip when you're holding something in. I know you'd rather live in a villa of your own design than in a palace someone else built for you. Her heart stuttered. She didn't show it. Knowing isn't the same as seeing, she said quietly. He nodded once. Then let me see. The morning after the truth unraveled. The mansion was disturbingly quiet. Liana sat at the edge of the grand balcony, barefoot, wrapped in a soft indigo shawl. Below her, the Aramu estate shimmered in the delicate gold of dawn, an empire. Waking, the gardeners moved like whispers between trimmed hedges. A peacock cried somewhere in the distance. She didn't flinch. Her hands rested on the iron rail, fingers tightening around the cold metal as if she could squeeze the answers out of it. He had walked, Tate Aramu had walked, not stumbled, not leaned, not braced, but walked. Smooth as breath, quiet as betrayal. Her thoughts hadn't stopped since. Was it a test? A punishment? A political strategy dressed in secrecy? Or was it protection from her, from the world? Behind her, the French doors opened with a hush. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She could feel him before he spoke. Didn't mean for you to find out like that, Tate said. The silence between them stretched thin. And how were you planning to tell me? She asked, voice calm, but edged with steel. I wasn't sure, he admitted. Every way seemed ... complicated. She turned now, slowly, eyes meeting his with the weight of someone measuring a man down to his soul. Lies always are. He stepped into the morning light, dressed not like a billionaire heir or political prince, but simply, dark shirt, linen pants, the understated uniform of someone who didn't need to prove he belonged. The wind tousled a strand of his hair, but nothing in his expression moved. I needed space to decide who I was again, he said, before the world decided for me. Liana folded her arms. And you decided you were a ghost. His eyes flickered. No. I decided I was watching, until I found something worth stepping into the light for. And now, his gaze didn't flinch. Now I'm here. They stood in that stillness, not as enemies, but not yet allies either. To people bound by a choice, neither of them fully made. Then he said, softer, I didn't mean to take your choice away, Liana. I only meant to offer something. Without the noise. Her breath hitched, but she kept her face unreadable. You offered a cage and painted it in my favorite colors. The wind stirred again, lifting the hem of her shawl like a warning. I'm not here to trap you, he said. I'm here to see if you'll walk through the door with me. Her voice dropped. Even if I burn it on the way in. His smirk was slow, dangerous. I've never been afraid of fire. The letter arrived on cream-colored stationery, no crest, no seal, just her name in calligraphy that slanted with the arrogance of old money. Liana, nothing more, nothing less. It had been slid under her door by someone too skilled to be noticed. Not even the scent of the envelope betrayed a sender. But she knew Tate. She unfolded it with steady fingers, the edge slicing faintly into her thumb. Her blood felt warmer than it should have. There's a room I want you to see. Noon. The East Hall. No guards, no cameras, just us. Come if you want. Truth. T. She stared at the words. Not please, not will you, just come. And, despite herself, she folded the note carefully and set it inside her nightstand. She hated how curiosity softened her anger. She hated even more that she was going by noon. Liana stood in front of the East Hall. The hallway had always felt ... forgotten. Faint outlines of paintings, long removed. Dustless but echoing an age that had passed. Marble beneath her bare feet, silence so still it throbbed. She pushed the heavy doors open. The light hit first, tall windows flooding the space with sun. Then the room itself came into focus. Part library, part war room, part sanctuary. Tate was seated at the long mahogany table, alone. No chair this time, He was already standing. She blinked. He didn't offer her a seat. "I wanted you to see me without the filter," he said, voice low. Without the script, the rumors, the posture. He walked slowly to the window. No limp. No hesitation. Liana followed with her eyes. "You've been hiding for years. What changed?" "You," he said without looking back. Her heart clenched before she could stop it. "Tate," she said cautiously, "you don't know me." "No," he agreed. "But I knew what you were before you did. And I've seen what you are now," he turned. "I watched your interviews, your projects. The architecture firm you pitched in London. The work you hid from your father." Her lips parted. "You, ... researched me. I studied you," he said. "Because I had to make sure they weren't sending me a shadow." "And what did you find?" He stepped closer. "Someone who hates being controlled, but who has never really been free." She stiffened. "And you think you're the answer to that?" "I think I might be the mirror. The question, the one person in this world who understands what it's like to be seen as a symbol and nothing more." Her throat tightened. Tate reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. He slid it across the table, toward her. She opened it slowly. A key, silver, old, with a lion engraved into the handle. "What is this?" He met her eyes. "The studio. Yours, it's at the far end of the estate. No one goes there, no staff, no surveillance." She held the key tighter. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I want to see who you become when no one's watching." The air between them grew still again, thick with everything unsaid. "And if I walk out of here?" she asked. "If I take this and disappear, then I'll know I didn't deserve to stay in your story." That night, Liana stood in front of the studio. She hadn't meant to come. Her feet had led her there, the same way you wander into a memory without warning. The door creaked open. Dust clung to the light. Inside, a drafting table. Shelves of untouched materials. Spools of fabric. Walls lined with blueprints from across the continent. Books stacked by geography and structure. Moorish arches beside Afro-Brazilian courtyards. It was more than a gift. It was a declaration. She sat at the desk, fingers twitching toward her sketchbook. She hadn't drawn in weeks. Not since the proposal, not since the weight of dynasties had landed on her shoulders. But tonight, her fingers found the pencil. She drew slowly, not a palace, not a villa. A space with ramps, with warmth, with shadows and light. A space where someone like him could move, and someone like her could breathe. She didn't finish the sketch, but when she looked up, the mirror above the desk caught her reflection, and for the first time since the wedding, ... she didn't look like a prisoner, she looked like someone preparing for war. The next morning, Liana woke before the light reached her curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bed was too soft. The silence too complete. No distant clatter of staff, no early meetings, no familiar hallway footsteps. Then it returned. The memory of yesterday's room, the studio, the velvet pouch and silver key, and Tate. Tate standing, Tate walking, Tate speaking truths she hadn't asked for and offering freedoms she didn't know how to hold. She pressed her palms into her eyes. She needed air. She walked alone, in slippers and a linen robe, through a part of the estate that still felt foreign. The sky was pink with morning. Dew-dusted the garden stones, bougainvillea vines curled down like royal drapery. She kept walking until she reached the end of the property, past the east wing, past the old pomegranate trees. The studio, the key slipped in like it belonged. The lock turned with a quiet click, and there it was. Her space, her choice. She moved to the window wall and slid it open, letting the breeze in. The studio smelled of clean wood and linen. The dust from yesterday had already been cleaned. A tray with tea, mango slices, and coconut bread had been left by someone with delicate hands. No note, but she knew. He was leaving fingerprints in her world again by mid-morning. She was sketching. First rooftops, then courtyards, then corners, then none at all. A house with no corners. That's what she was designing. A space where nothing could trap her. where no conversation ended with a slammed door, where the walls didn't echo commands. She worked in silence for hours, and then a knock. She turned slowly, not at the door. At the glass wall. Tate, standing barefoot in the grass, wearing a sand-colored shirt with the sleeves rolled high, and a softness in his face that she hadn't seen before. She opened the window. "You don't knock," she said dryly. He tilted his head. "I didn't want to interrupt, but you came anyway." His eyes drifted over the drawing behind her. "You're designing freedom. Is that what you see?" "It's what I recognize." The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in." He crossed the threshold quietly, like he respected the space too much to claim it. She didn't offer him a seat. He didn't take one. Tate walked to the far wall, where her pinned sketches fluttered lightly in the breeze. "You've never shown these to anyone," he said. She blinked. "How would you know? Because they're raw. Nothing about them is performative." His gaze landed on one drawing, an open, layered home with climbing vines, and a water feature that ran through the center. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's unfinished," she corrected. "Like you." Her breath hitched. He turned to face her. "I mean that as a compliment." "No," she said, folding her arms. "You mean it as a challenge." His lips curved faintly. "That too." Later, she found herself watching him. Not just looking, studying the way he stood, the way he chose to stand, deliberate, balanced. "Why fake it?" she asked suddenly. "Why let the world believe you couldn't walk?" Tate leaned against the drafting table, arms folded. "Because power isn't always about presence. Sometimes it's about absence." "That's not an answer." He looked at her, long and clear. "People treat you differently when they think you're broken. They speak more freely. They show you what they hide from the strong. And now, what are you hiding?" He stepped closer. "You want the truth?" he asked. She nodded. "I wasn't pretending," he said, his voice low. "There was a time I couldn't walk. I broke my spine in 3 places. Doctors told me I might never regain full use." She swallowed. "But I did," he continued. "I just didn't correct anyone, because weakness became ... convenient." Liana stared at him, unsure what to feel. Anger, understanding, admiration. "So what now?" she asked. "Is this the part where you tell me I should be grateful for the palace and the closet full of designer distractions?" "No," he said. "This is the part where I tell you I want you to use every tool I've given you. To tear down every wall they've built around you." She stilled. "What do you want from me, Tate?" His eyes softened. "I want to see what you build when no one's in your way." That night, Liana stood at her window in silence. Below, in the courtyard, soft light spilled across the stone path. A breeze stirred the trees. Somewhere in the distance, laughter drifted from the staff quarters. But in her mind, only his voice. "I want to see what you build." She reached for her sketchbook again. This time, she drew faster. Not a home, not a monument, not a throne. She was sketching a door, one no man had ever designed for her. The next morning, the estate hummed with a different rhythm. Servants moved faster, arrangements were being rechecked, and someone was polishing the brass crest on the main gates for the 3rd time. Liana watched it all from her window, half-dressed hair still damp from her shower. Something was coming, or someone. She wrapped her silk robe tighter, stepped away from the sunlight, and moved toward her phone. Messages flooded in her father's secretary confirming a breakfast with trade delegates. Her cousin asking about the honeymoon, there was none. Even a polite inquiry from the press liaison about scheduling a brief, tasteful interview. She silenced it all. Then came the soft knock, not the glass wall of the studio. This time, her bedroom door. She opened it, and found Y.A., the house's quiet shadow of a maid, standing with her hands folded, eyes lowered. "There's someone to see." "You, Madam Who?" Mr. Aramu said only you would understand. Liana blinked. "Where?" "The greenhouse." She didn't ask why. She simply closed the door, got dressed, and followed. The greenhouse stood on the far western edge of the estate. Glass walls and an arched iron frame like a jewel. Box built for the sun. Liana had never been inside. She hadn't even known it existed until now. When she pushed open the door, the scent of damp earth and lavender hit her first. Then the sound soft, trickling from a stone fountain in the center. And there, sitting in the light, like some carved memory of another life, was Seji, her mother's old friend, auntie-not-by-blood, mentor. Once a whisper of rebellion in silk form, now, older, quieter, dressed in a deep wine-colored boo-boo with her locks coiled into a crown around her head. Seji, Liana, whispered, voice catching. I told him I wouldn't come unless you said yes. The woman replied, without rising. Liana stepped forward slowly, heart tripping. And I didn't say yes. He knew you wouldn't. That's why he sent no message. A pause. The air between them thickened. You look like her, Sei said finally. But sharper, around the edges. Like someone who's already been chipped. Liana smiled bitterly. I've been sanded by legacy. Sei laughed softly. They do that. These men with their names and houses and intentions. She rose now, slow, deliberate. Her bracelets clinked as she approached. Come, she said, taking Liana's hand, sit with me. They sank into the low bench beneath the hanging. Orchids, Sei's voice lowered. He asked me to speak with you, Tate. Liana stiffened. To say what? That he sees your fury, and he respects it. Liana said nothing. He doesn't expect you to trust him, Sei continued. But he wants you to know. He will never ask you to shrink. Silence. You believe him? Liana asked flatly. I don't believe men, my dear. I believe patterns. And Tate Aramu's pattern is ... protection. Liana turned to her. Protection can be a prison. Yes, Seji agreed softly. Especially if you don't choose it. They walked the greenhouse slowly, like priests in a sacred temple. Liana's fingers grazed the leaves as she passed. Everything smelled alive, earthy, clean, untouched by politics. What did he say to convince you to come? She asked finally. Sei stopped, looked her in the eye. He said, she needs to know the ghosts that built this house. Liana frowned. I don't. There are things you haven't been told, Sei cut in. About your mother, about the Elamine legacy, about what this marriage is really tying together. Liana's heart thumped louder. Sei reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope. Read it, when you're alone, and when you're ready. Liana stared at it, hesitant. Seji placed it in her palm gently. Tate isn't just protecting you from the world, Liana. He's shielding you from a war you didn't know you were born into. That night, Liana didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of her bed with the envelope unopened beside her, staring at it like it might catch fire. Tate hadn't come again. Not the previous night. Not tonight. She wanted to hate that this disappointed her. She wanted to believe she was still untouched by his orbit, but she wasn't. He was in her head now. In her studio, in her story, and maybe, just maybe, in her protection. She picked up the envelope and slowly, deliberately, tore it open. Inside, a letter in her mother's handwriting and a single line highlighted in gold ink. Legacy isn't what we inherit, it's what we survive. The morning after the revelation, after Tate walked, after he said nothing, after he simply existed in defiance of every story she'd been told, Liana woke in a bed too soft to feel real. The golden light filtered through silk curtains, and the smell of oud still clung faintly to the sheets. But the man was gone. No chair, no cane, no evidence he'd ever stepped into her room, except for the glass on the nightstand and the sentence that still echoed in her head. You were expecting wheels. He had left that truth in her room like a weapon and vanished. She sat up slowly, her braid loose and tangled at one end. Her body still ached from the tension, not from any touch, there had been none, but from the weight of everything that had passed between them in silence. A robe lay at the foot of the bed, not hers. Slate gray, unmarked, soft, masculine. Another message. Liana slipped it on anyway. Downstairs, the estate buzzed faintly. Staff moved. Like ghosts. Silent, efficient, avoiding her gaze, but not rudely. Just enough to make her feel contained, not watched, but not exactly free, either. A maid she hadn't seen before appeared beside her as she descended the grand staircase. "Mr. Aramu requests your presence in the east courtyard," she said. "No. Would you like no when you're ready?" Just another summon wrapped in velvet. Liana nodded once and followed. The east courtyard was not a garden, it was an arena. Sculpted stone pillars framed an open space where the sun pulled in. Warm gold. Low marble benches hugged the curved edges, and in the center, a reflecting pool shimmered. Flat and undisturbed. Tate stood at its edge, hands clasped behind his back, no chair. Again dressed in a crisp black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, linen trousers tailored to precision. He didn't turn when she approached. "Good morning," she said carefully. A beat. Then he spoke, still facing the water. "There's a reason I didn't tell anyone." Liana folded her arms across her chest. "That you can walk," he nodded. "That I was never injured the way they said." She swallowed hard. "Why?" He finally turned to her. "Because power," he said softly, "tastes different when people think you've lost it." Her breath caught. He stepped closer. "They made assumptions. I let them. People lower their guard around broken things." Liana narrowed her eyes. "So what am I then? A pawn in your quiet revenge?" "No," he said, voice flat. "You're the only one who didn't look at me with pity even when you believed the lie." She flinched. Tate's eyes were unreadable. "I needed a wife, not a nursemaid, not a handler, not another mask. Someone strong enough to stand beside me while the rest of the world keeps guessing." Liana's voice was a whisper. "So you chose me?" He nodded once. "Because you're the one they underestimated, just as much as me." They didn't speak again for a long time. Liana sat on the bench, sunlight warming her back. Tate stood at the edge of the pool, unmoving, like he was carved into the courtyard itself. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you want to try this?" He didn't look at her. "What's this?" She sighed. "This marriage, not the contract, not the cameras, the people inside it." Still, he didn't move. "I'm not sure I know how." Her laugh was dry. "Join the club." He turned then, his gaze sharper. "I don't expect you to trust me, not yet. But I need you to understand this much. I'm not your enemy." She held his stare. "No, but you're not my friend either." Another beat. And then he gave the smallest nod, almost respectful. Noted that night, Liana didn't return to the bridal suite. She requested a different room. He didn't question it. She needed walls, space, air. But at 2 a.m. she sat awake at the window, sketchbook in her lap, fingers trembling slightly as she drew out the rough outline of the courtyard. Not the grandeur, not the pillars, just the pool. The man beside it, still silent, powerful and unknowable. She closed the book and whispered to the empty room. "So this is what it's like to be married to a myth. *, to be continued."